Breaking news this Wednesday night, mourning the loss of the first Canadian in space. Marc Garneau's wide-ranging legacy in politics and as an astronaut. Tariff tactics, Canada's strategy to fight U.S. taxes on steel and aluminum.
We will make sure that we impose maximum pain to the U.S.
The pressure businesses are under. Up in flames, prairie communities ravaged, pets needing help.
We are scrambling to process new fosters.
And scientists on a mission to predict when and where wildfires could erupt. Plus, all aboard the Edmonton Oilers bandwagon.
Go Oil.
Why support for the team has grown since last year.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Eric Sorensen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news and sad news out of Ottawa. The first Canadian in space and the former Transport and Foreign Affairs Minister, Marc Garneau, has died at the age of 76. The surprising news delivered in a statement from his wife, Pam. Marc faced his final days with the same strength, clarity, and grace that defined his life, she said, adding, the family is especially grateful to the medical team who provided such dedicated and compassionate care during his short illness. No further details have been released about Garneau's illness. A moment of silence was held tonight for the former Liberal MP who served in Parliament from 2008 until retiring in 2023. Those who worked closely with him are remembering Garneau for his steady leadership.
I watched him and I thought, if you want a captain of the ship, it's Marc Garneau. He was steady, serious, no nonsense, but a gentleman above all else.
Mike Armstrong looks back at Garneau's life and legacy in tonight's top story.
Yeah, actually, I'm getting all the time I can. In fact, every time we go over Canada, I'm generally stuck at the window having a look out there.
He wore a maple leaf for much of his life, and always with pride. Marc Garneau was born in 1949 in Quebec City into a family that knew service. His father served in the Second World War. His grandfather fought in the First. As a teen, Garneau joined the Royal Canadian Sea Cadets and then moved on to Collège Militaire in Quebec and then Royal Military College in Kingston. He was well on his way to a career in the Navy when in 1983 he saw an ad in the newspaper. The National Research Council of Canada was recruiting astronauts. Garneau was part of that first class. More than 4,200 people applied, only 6 were chosen.
5, 4, 3.
Barely a year later, Garneau would become the first Canadian in space, launching aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger. He would go on to fly 2 more missions in his career, spending nearly 700 hours in orbit. Later, as president of the Canadian Space Agency, Garneau helped shape the next generation of Canadian space innovation. Garneau moved to politics in 2008, elected as a member of Parliament for Montreal. He would serve for a time as Minister of Transport and Minister of Foreign Affairs. Garneau retired from politics in 2023, closing the third of 3 very different chapters, from the military to space to Parliament. Looking back, Garneau would call it a charmed life, lived in the service of his country.
An historic figure in this country, Marc Garneau was 76 years old. Canada is reeling from a new round of U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum. President Trump hiked tariffs to 50% last night. As America's largest supplier of both steel and aluminum, it is a major blow to Canadian exports. Prime Minister Mark Carney says the tariffs are unjustified and illegal. Even some U.S. senators say they are hurting American businesses. As David Akin reports, there are signs that relief may come from negotiation, not retaliation.
The Prime Minister's first question of the day was about the new American tariffs.
They're bad for American workers, bad for American industry, and of course for Canadian industry as well.
But not bad enough to impose dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs, as campaigning Liberals once promised.
We will make sure that we impose maximum pain to the U.S. while having minimum pain, minimum impact to Canadians. We are looking at different scenarios right now.
Canada already has about $90 billion in counter tariffs in place, but that was a result of the first round of steel and aluminum tariffs. But Ontario's premier took to the U.S. networks to say he's pushing for more retaliatory tariffs, telling CNN,
I've highly recommended to the Prime Minister directly
that we slap another 25% on top of our tariffs to equal President Trump's tariffs on our steel.
But the PM is not there yet.
We are in intensive negotiations with the Americans and in parallel preparing reprisals if those negotiations do not succeed.
Some American senators are hoping those negotiations succeed.
It's hard for me to understand how we can continue to support our defense industry when we don't have the ability to get the supply chain that they need to operate.
But the U.S. Commerce Secretary defended the tariffs by citing the improbable scenario of America entering a global conflict and not having enough steel to fight.
If you don't have the ability to make your own steel and aluminum, you can't fight a war, and that is what the president's doing.
Meanwhile, one of Scotiabank's top economists, Derek Holt, sent out a note to his firm's clients today saying there was no need for Canada to respond with retaliatory tariffs because, in Holt's view, Trump is doing enough damage himself to America's economy that he'll be forced to stand down. Eric.
David Akin in Ottawa, thank you. Prime Minister Mark Carney is also facing pressure from Labour, municipal and business leaders who are calling on his government to quickly respond to Washington's tariffs.
Workers are facing job losses now. Workers are wanting to know what our government is prepared to do. Counter-tariff has to be on the table. We have to be meeting force with force. We cannot back away from this.
Industry leaders say tariffs will shut Canadian producers out of the U.S. and jeopardize goods and thousands of jobs across the country. They're calling on the federal government to take urgent steps to bolster Canadian businesses. Felicia Perillo with reaction now from some of those who are set to be the hardest hit.
Tariffs have been wreaking havoc on the Canadian steel industry. Producers say shipments to the U.S. are down about 30%, and hiking tariffs to 50% will hit the industry even harder.
I think it's the safest bet to assume that the U.S. market is closed entirely to the Canadian steel industry.
The Canadian Steel Producers Association says the steel industry employs over 120,000 Canadians. Since March, about 700 workers have been laid off. And if the tariff increase sticks, the association's president fears the impacts will be devastating.
Once you have destroyed the supply chains, once you have lost the workforce, once you have lost the customers, how do you rebuild?
At CFF Stainless Steels in Hamilton, the company says it had already decided to stop importing materials from the U.S. when Trump implemented his first round of tariffs. Their clients export finished products to the States. He says with the increase in tariffs, it's creating a lot of uncertainty.
Their reluctancy to place POs, only buy what they need and only buy what they require for the job. So we've seen a shift in people's buying patterns as well. So we're just trying to deal with it in a day-to-day situation.
Meanwhile, about 60% of aluminum used in the U.S. comes from Quebec. The industry says the hike will have significant impacts on both Canadian and U.S. companies.
It's at a point where products made with aluminum will be much more expensive. And we were already seeing it with the 25% tariff, but it will just accelerate market destruction.
Industry leaders say to help producers, businesses, and workers weather this storm, they need help from the federal government now. They want Ottawa to implement higher border tariffs and want the federal government to prioritize purchasing from Canadian companies and manufacturers. Felicia Perillo, Global News, Montreal.
The economic uncertainty caused by Trump's trade war wasn't reason enough for the Bank of Canada to budge today, holding its benchmark interest rate steady at 2.75%. That's not a surprise. Most analysts weren't predicting a rate cut. But as Ann Gaviola reports, with the economy slowing, it is showing signs of weakness and more cuts may be coming.
Well, we've seen President Trump continue to make announcements, rolling back some tariffs, increasing them, rolling them back. I think that the short answer is it's still a moving target.
A moving target dubbed TACO by investors. TACO stands for Trump always chickens out when it comes to trade threats, except for when he doesn't. Wednesday marks day one of U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum doubling, and this country is our southern neighbor's biggest exporter. Tariffs continue to cause financial headaches and hardship for households and businesses.
looking for new suppliers, carrying more inventory. And every time an announcement's made, businesses are left to kind of figure out what it means. All of that has costs.
That's affecting a whole lot of small businesses, and it actually impacts them faster.
So far, tarifflation has been muted, offset by the scrapping of the consumer carbon price, expected to dampen prices at the pumps until April. But it's shown up in the labor market as slower hiring and in food inflation. This Vancouver coffee shop and roaster is dealing with mounting cost pressures.
And we've had to pass that on to our customers, kind of walking a fine line of trying to maintain our customers as well as, remain profitable so we can stay in business.
We're not really in normal times, right? We've seen the largest shock to the Canadian trading relationship pretty much in our history.
The central bank has to weigh upward pressure on inflation from higher prices and downward pressure from sluggish growth. Most economists see a recession in the cards this year.
We're still looking for a technical recession, which is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, but maybe not as negative as we had originally anticipated. Everything is very fluid, right?
But there is more cutting that will need to be done this year.
The Bank of Canada's next interest rate announcement is July 30th. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Prime Minister Carney faced his first real political test since the election, a confidence vote. MPs have voted on the Liberal minority's government throne speech, and to the surprise of many, the NDP said they would vote against it. But in the end, no one opposed it, and the Liberals have survived the first confidence vote of this parliamentary session. Several communities across the Prairies are assessing the damage from flare-ups in the western wildfires. The weather is a bit cooler, but persistent winds out of the northwest are fanning the flames, and some of the smoke has drifted all the way to Europe. Melissa Ridgen reports.
Flames have leveled homes and buildings across parts of Saskatchewan. The Robertson Trading Post in L'Orange was among the casualties Tuesday night. The owners sharing the news on social media. The building was just a building, but the loss of hundreds of pieces of Indigenous art and historical artifacts is catastrophic. A vast collection of Indigenous art and irreplaceable relics, all gone.
If we had one big fire, that's not a problem. If we had a whole bunch of small fires, not a big problem. If we had a whole bunch of work that lasted 3 or 4 days and then it rained, it wouldn't be a problem. But we're talking a much bigger complexity. Until we see significant rain in this province, we will continue to have some difficulty in managing these fires.
A fire that's joined 2 others to straddle the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border is ravaging Denair Beach. Half of that community has been lost. This fishing resort there, among the properties leveled. As fires rage across the prairies, this one in Manitoba near Nopaming Provincial Park has consumed an area 4 times the size of the city of Winnipeg and remains out of control. An hour away in Bird River, firefighters have managed to save homes and cottages despite flames getting dangerously close. In all, more than 30,000 people have been evacuated in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, with many of them pets. Animal rescue groups taking on the overwhelming task of collecting hundreds of animals that can't stay with their humans in hotels or community centers.
We are scrambling to process new fosters, and that's what I've been doing 10 to 12 hours a day, processing them with my team.
Through all the chaos, it's Clean Air Day in Canada. The irony draped in smoke. Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
After last year's Game 7 heartbreak, the Edmonton Oilers begin their quest for redemption tonight in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals against the Florida Panthers. A lot of Canadian hockey fans are desperate for the Cup to come home for the first time in more than 3 decades. And as Heather Yorick-West explains, political tensions with the U.S. are also fueling that sentiment.
From the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto.
Who are you cheering for this year?
Edmonton. To Connor McDavid's Ontario hometown.
Newmarket is officially Oilers country.
Canada is awash in orange and blue.
Oh, they're a Canadian team and they're really good.
I gotta stick Canada first, so go Oil.
Lord Stanley's Cup may count Canada as its permanent home, but you have to go back to 1993 to find the last time it was awarded to the team in the North.
It's been so long that Canada's had a good chance to win the Cup. The whole country's kind of on board with a Canadian team finally bringing it home.
Polling by Ipsos has found that not only are most Canadians supporting the Oilers as Canada's team, but that support has grown over last year, from 57% in 2024 to 63% this time around.
I always have supported Canadian teams, but I think definitely what's happening right now politically has reinforced my love for Canadian teams, for sure, my support.
Donald Trump's repeated threats to Canada's sovereignty made Canada's Four Nations face-off victory in February especially sweet. Now, Connor McDavid has Canadians hoping to do it again. Though in rival Flames country, not everyone is sold.
It's a tough call. It's kind of like having an older brother that's better than you in absolutely everything, and then trying to get behind it.
What about bringing the Stanley Cup back to Canada after 30 years?
That would be great if it was anybody but Edmonton.
And just to make the series with Canada's team more interesting, if required, Game 6 would be played during the G7, when conceivably Prime Minister Carney, a big Oilers fan, could be watching alongside President Trump right here in Alberta. Eric?
Makes it even more interesting. Heather Yurix West, thank you. And we'll go out to Edmonton to catch up with enthusiastic fans a little later. But first, what was found in a German city that forced a major evacuation? U.S. President Donald Trump says he spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin on the phone today. In a social media post, Trump says it was a good conversation, but will not lead to immediate peace, adding Putin very strongly said he will have to respond to Ukraine's surprise drone attack on Russian airfields on Sunday. Trump didn't say if he discouraged Putin from retaliating. Instead, he expressed optimism about something else, saying Putin suggested he will participate in discussions with Iran over its nuclear capabilities. The United States has vetoed a UN Security Council resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, saying it did not call on the release of Israeli hostages or for Hamas to be disarmed. 14 of the 15 members of the Security Council voted in favor of the resolution, which described the humanitarian situation in Gaza as catastrophic and demanded Israel lift all restrictions on the delivery of aid. The vote comes on the same day that a U.S. and Israeli-backed group paused food delivery at its 3 distribution sites in Gaza. The decision follows a series of shootings near the sites this week that left dozens of Palestinians dead. In southern India, at least 11 people were killed outside a cricket stadium. The crush happened as tens of thousands of fans celebrated the winners of the Indian Premier League, one of the most popular cricket tournaments in the world. It was the first title for the local team. Players were bussed in, but many people without valid tickets to the event were trampled as they tried to force their way in. Dozens were taken to hospital. More than 20,000 people in Cologne, Germany, are returning to their homes after being evacuated over the discovery of 3 unexploded bombs from the Second World War. The large American bombs, 80 years old, were found during construction work near the city center. Homes, schools, even a hospital were forced to be cleared out in what was called the city's largest post-war operation. Bomb disposal teams successfully defused the explosives. Warning tools for wildfires, what scientists need to help reduce the risk. While crews are on the front lines of wildfires burning throughout much of the country, there are researchers working to predict when and where fires might break out. They're using drones, cameras, and satellite imaging, but there are challenges as Canada waits for a major wildfire satellite project to come online. Heidi Petracek reports.
As fire crews battle more than 200 active wildfires throughout the nation.
You can see here is the wildfire right now.
Time ticks for scientists using technology to try to predict where fires could break out.
Technology right now is becoming the best ally to saving time and saving lives.
This University of Ottawa researcher used computer coding to crunch satellite weather and topographical data for Manitoba, concluding the wildfires there have emerged from a perfect storm. Lack of snow, an early melt, decreased vegetation, and a dry spring.
The conditions were invisible to the naked eye. Study showed us what happened exactly in the area.
Using high-tech tools to combat wildfires is becoming more common. In Vernon, BC, artificial intelligence analyzes information from cameras and air sensors to identify fires in minutes. While at the University of Moncton, researchers are developing AI tools for projects in New Brunswick, Alberta, and Ontario.
The machine is doing the work 24 hours a day, and you cannot expect to have as many persons doing that job.
But even AI is up against obstacles when it comes to covering the entire country.
Fire predictions needs a lot of data, and those data are not available right now. For example, for fire spread, we use data coming from the U.S.
Ottawa awarded a $72 million contract for a satellite system to monitor Canadian wildfires. It isn't expected to come online for 4 years. Researchers say they need more information sooner to improve AI's predictive powers.
This is something we need to think about it, and even seriously in the short time.
With this wildfire season already well underway. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Next, puck drop in oil country. The scenes from Edmonton as the Oilers begin their Stanley Cup rematch. Excitement is in the air in Edmonton. The Oilers and the Florida Panthers are on the ice in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. It's a rematch of last year's final, only this time Edmonton starts with home ice advantage. Global's Jasmine King is in oil country tonight.
Edmonton Oilers fans are very excited to watch their team once again in the Stanley Cup Finals. Of course, this has been a year coming, especially since this is a rematch of last year's Cup Final. And fans have been out here for hours, really just waiting to watch their team. They're getting ready to play tonight's matchup in Edmonton. So, of course, they're really hoping to see some of that home ice advantage. And a lot of fans have been waiting here. I mean, we spoke to some fans around 2:30, and then some of those fans have come from all over, whether that's Vancouver, the East Coast, even the America. People have come to watch the Oilers, really hoping to take it to the next level. And of course, they're certainly nervous because of the rematch, but there's a lot of people who are come down here every game, and they're hoping that their own homemade costumes and everything can be a good luck charm for the team.
Stand out in the crowd, and the Oilers need to be warriors in this playoff series, and we need them to be warriors, to go into battle and fight to bring the cup home to Canada.
As you can tell, I kind of have the Jesus look already. My friends always called it to me when I was younger, and then when we drafted him, we called him McJesus, so... I've been a diehard fan my entire life, 29 years, and this is our year. We're getting it.
It's very loud down here with all the fans. Of course, they're really hoping for some good news to come out of tonight's game, and they're hoping that that can carry on for the rest of the season and maybe get some luck from McJesus in the end. But of course, they're really going to have to wait just to see what happens tonight. But they're really hoping that the Oilers can bring a cup home to Canadian soil for the first time in more than 30 years.
Jasmine King in Edmonton, thank you. And that's 32 years if you're keeping count. That is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Eric Sorensen. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Fairyland, Newfoundland and Labrador, the Alberta Railway Museum in Edmonton, and Pasqua Lake, Saskatchewan. Keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to Global National at globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Donna will be back tomorrow night. Have a good night.